Hi, Rich Daly from DynoPort. Did a clutch video yesterday on the 850 Skidoo. Getting a lot of calls, so I'm going to get into a long detail on clutching because it's really a mystery to most people. I started racing snowmobiles till 1998. The first thing I did was buy a Skidoo race manual and read it on the way to the races because I was clueless. You'll hear all these myths about Skidoo clutches. They don't mile per hour, they don't this and that, they don't grip the belt mid-range. All complete BS. The Skidoo clutch is probably one of the best going, very adjustable. A lot of people don't understand it. I'm going to go over the Skidoo clutch. The basics work the same on a flyweight clutch pretty much. So let me start with the springs first. The easiest and simplest thing to do is change your engagement. So you can change your engagement by going to a slightly stiffer spring. It's got two numbers on the spring. The one is for where it engages, the other gives it the different tension as the clutch is fully compressed, so it can change your shift rate a little. Another quick, easy tip to do, little shim, you could put it under a stock spring, bring your engagement up 1 or 200, or fine tune your race spring. The next thing I'm going to get into is setting your belt deflection. I like to put the belt as high as I can. You can see this is our 280 horse asphalt clutch. We're riding, we took the shim right out. Gives me a better gear ratio. Puts me in a lower gear. The other thing too that's my pet peeve, people talk so much about belt slippage, and clutch kit guys say the same. Guys, your belt always slips a small amount. It's part of a variable clutch, but unless you got a very big girlfriend riding 2-up and studded with 288 studs, or an improver snowmobile, which is a 775 or 50 pound snowmobile, your belt doesn't slip. So forget that term. The next thing to get into to change on your clutch that you could easily do would be the Helix. So what we're looking for, as I showed yesterday on the chart, is a shift rate where you come out, your RPMs go to almost peak, and then you creep up 1, 2 to 300, depending on how far you go, whether you go 500 feet or a mile. So your Helix, the first number, let's say this is a 50-45, your first number is going to determine about a third of your shift, and then the rest would be as you get more into the top end. So if you want to pull your motor down a little more, you'll go to a higher number on your first number. If you're over revving, you'll go to a higher number on your second number. So just remember, a bigger number loads you more in either spot. We use the Dalton Helixes. I believe they're probably the best as far as where they're hard coated. Very good. This is an RER Skidoo surface area. The next thing that's very simple and way overrated is gearing. Again, if you're racing in the dirt, you're studded, you're hooked hard into the clay, then you have to gear your sled. For all other types of racing, leave your gearing alone. All my hill sleds, and we're racing up ski hills 500 feet, are stock gearing. The reason being, and radar guys will tell you the same thing. If you gear your sled down, now your primary clutch is going to open all the way, and your secondary is going to open all the way, your primary is going to close. So your belt's going to look like this in the secondary, which takes horsepower. If you leave it geared a little high, your belt's going to look more like this in a much better ratio. So more efficient, less power because of the flex. So gearing, now it gets a little complicated. The ramps. Before I go into the ramps, the beauty of the Skidoo clutch is the clicker adjustment. So let's say we want to turn 8,000 RPMs and we're turning 82. I just adjust the clicker. What the clicker does is move my ramp down, so now there's more force, I turn less RPMs. It's all a ratio. I could have done the same thing by changing my helix 1 or 2 degrees, and that would have loaded the motor the same. So let's go back to our old belt gripping story. If I move my helix, it's going to make it shift quicker. If I move my ramp, it's going to do the same thing. Is one going to grip the belt more than the other? I think moving the ramp might. Belt grippage is not the issue. It's getting the correct combination. So let's get into ramp design. So a simple, and I'm using, again, skidoo ramps. There's profiles on flyweight clutches too. So you just put a bolt in between. I've got a 145, I've got a 280, and I've got a PX. So basically, a PX, SPX is the same ramp. There's my SPX. There's my 280. My 280's got a little higher engagement, then comes up through, and at the finish, my 280 is a little bit revier. My 145, same as the 280, a little revier at the finish. Now I'm going to go into, because you'll see on all these chat rooms, and most of the stuff on there is faults or somebody who's not real knowledgeable. Skidoo engineers are great on clutching. They have a 410, 412, 413, 414. Basically a 410 ramp is for a lower horsepower machine. So a 410 ramp is going to have a profile like this. Now I see guys selling $500 clutch kits for an XP with a 410 ramp. Those boys are out to lunch. They've had to change everything else to get the 410 ramp to work. The other thing, I've got 2 XPs I've raced. One, the 08 came with 413s. One, the 09 came with 414s. So you see everybody saying you got to run a 414. The only difference between a 14 and a 13 is a few thousandths up here. It's one click on my clutch. So I'm still using those ramps. I don't care whether I've got a 13 or a 14. I'll adjust my clutch. I guess the next thing to get into that's fine tuning is the size of the roller. A bigger roller, number one, is heavier, so then you need to adjust your pin weight to become the same. The only thing a bigger roller does, it gives you a slightly higher engagement because your arm sits up a little more, and it gives you a very slightly different profile because as your arm arcs, it's just a little bit different contour. The other thing is notching your ramps. I hate to notch ramps unless I absolutely have to. I like to bring my engagement up with a stiff spring. I'll get into using my Thunder product arms, which will bring the engagement up. Problem is when you notch your ramp, I found it out when I first started asphalt racing, once it comes off the notch, it gives the arm a little momentum. You'll get a bit of a bog, so then you have to go through and change your helix. So better off to bring your engagement up just to grind it at an angle like this so it doesn't come off a notch. And again, no reason to notch a ramp unless you've got a very high RPM peaky race motor, and very high RPM. So, adjustable arms. I've got Thunder shifts in my Skidoo clutch. They make them for all the clutches. Dalton also has an adjustable arm with a set screw in it. I'll give you an example of what happens with arms. When I first started racing dirt, and I had an open mod slide, I decided to buy the magnesium arms. On my Pro Stock 1000, I ran a stock Helix 5047 with 22 gram pins. Once I put magnesium arms on my other 1000, I had to go to a 5347, so a 6, what I call a 6 spread on my Helix, 53 to 47. The 50 to 47 was a 3 spread. The reason being, it changed my whole shift arc. So in other words, I had to go heavier on the pins. I had to go 2 grams heavier out on the end. The beauty of either a Dalton or a Thunder products, I don't have to put all my weight on the end. So I can put some in the middle. what this does, with all my weight on the end, if I spun, my clutch stays together because I've got so much weight it doesn't recover quick. And it'll bob. With the lighter arms and more of the weight in the middle, when I spin, the recovery is much quicker. Now, if you don't go radical, you can use these arms with your stock Helix. My hill sleds, which I think the 1XP came with a maybe a 46-42. What I've gone is 48-42, 2 degrees more because of the light arms, and in a spin situation, it definitely recovers quicker because of the light arms. Let me just go a little bit back into the Helixes. If you have a stock sled and you're going to drag race your buddies, the best thing you can do is probably buy a Helix with a slightly different angle. Now there's 2 ways you can go. If you don't want to invest in the adjustable arms, you can go 1 or 2 degrees heavy or higher on your start rate, which will load the motor a little more, leaving less chance of spinning hard, and it will keep you on your torque a little longer. What I like to do on the stock cat I race, I actually put a Helix in that was a little steeper in the beginning and a little steeper at the end. The reason being, then I did not have to weight my front arms as much. I was using stock arms when I started, and it helps in a spin situation. I since switched to the adjustable ones. I forgot to mention something on the adjustable ones. The beauty of any adjustable weight, your clutching is a function of horsepower. So as Tim Bender and I had this discussion years ago when he was in my dyno room, if it's a 100-degree day out and humid, our 200 horse engine is probably only making 160. We can run more timing, tighter stingers. And if we're going to go out in the field and drive it, we're going to need way less clutch weight, less Helix. Now, if you're 10 below 0, you're going to have, instead of 200 horse, probably 210 or 20. You're going to need a steeper Helix, you're going to need heavier weights, you're going to need bigger outlets. So guys, there's no magic. It's all common sense. It pertains to horsepower versus your clutch shifter weight. So the beauty of a Skidoo clutch that Polaris and cat riders can't enjoy stock, if I take my Skidoo trail sled out on a spring day and it's under revving 100 or 200 RPMs, I adjust my clicker to a 1 number higher and it's back. Same deal with my Thunder Shifter Daltons. When I race at SHCRA on the ski hills, some nights we start out, it's maybe 20 degrees. As the night goes on, we get to 0 or much better air, or even below 0. I'll quickly reach in with and adjust my Allen. I'll move it in as the night gets colder to put a little more weight. I can easily fine tune it 100 RPMs, 200 if I have to. You could do the same on a Polaris clutch. Let's say you were 68 was your best weight, 66 being stock. You could have a 67, you could have a 68, you could have a 69. You just have to reach in and change your complete weight. So again, the adjustability, even on a trail sled, for a trail guy, if you want to beat your buddies, if you want to have top performance, is key. Okay, Helix, weights. I'm trying to think if I've forgotten anything. Yes, the combination between your Helix and your weights, doesn't matter what clutch you have. I'll give you an example. My Pro Stock 1000, Vince D'Arigo, top tuner in asphalt, we were out testing at Seneca Falls, and the sled was a little lazy coming out. We had 280 ramps in it, and I believe a 145. So what we did, we were on clicker, I forget what, 4 or 5 maybe. What we did is we took two 280s out, put a PX in. What this allowed us to do, when we put the PX in, it's going to bring our RPMs down. So when we put the PX in, we now clicked up, which moved the arm up, all the way up to here. Even though your Skidoo manual says it doesn't make an RPM difference, it makes a big difference. It not only increased our RPMs 100 or 200, it let us come out 50 to 100 feet with less load, more in our power band. So that's a simple trick. Another trick I learned years ago before I did any clutching, we were on the way to Canada to test. I got there and the sled was over revving. I had nothing with me. So I took a body grinder and I shortened the heel on my Skidoo ramp. So what that allowed me to do, even though I was on clicker 1, it now dropped me down. So it made me act like a negative clicker 2. I got my correct RPMs, picked up mile an hour. I've also done the same, as you can see on one of these, I've welded on it. So instead of having just clicker 6, now with it welded when I'm in clicker 6, the arm sits up higher. Acts like 7 or 8. So you can fine tune to get more in your adjustment range, but before you do that, you've got to get in the ballpark. And then it's the small things that makes the difference between winning or losing, or that few hundreds. Guys, one simple little technique that I need to mention. A lot of talk about back shift, okay? Your stock back shift is good, but not as quick as a snowcross guy. If you've got a 800 twin, I personally like that because it hooks better. If you want it quicker, more like a snowcross sled, all you have to do is take your stock Helix and put a stiffer spring in. What that will do is when you come into the corner, it disengages your Helix more, and as your Helix comes back in, your Helix is slower to go to the harder angle. So again, you don't necessarily have to change the Helix. It's a fine-tuning deal. The other thing I want to mention on the stiff spring, when we set the mile an hour record, we had a stock spring out of my XP trail sled, which is super soft, a 280 horse engine, and the reason being, it allows the belt not to be stuck in the secondary and bending. The belt comes off the secondary easier. You've got less friction. So the last thing you want in a clutch kit, guys, unless you want super quick back shifting, is a real stiff spring, because it will hurt your mile an hour a hair. So I think that's the last on the tips. Thanks.